Hi, Casey. So one new case overnight in Victoria, but one which was under investigation yesterday. So does this show that the lockdown is working, or does it show rather that the lockdown wasn't necessary?
Yeah, afternoon, Ros. I think the unsatisfying answer is it sort of depends a bit on your viewpoint on how you measure risk, how you assess the risk, and how you measure the impact and the damage that a lockdown causes. And you put all that together and you can come up with, if you make different assumptions, maybe different, conclusions about the necessity of the lockdown or otherwise. But let's just step through where we're at, and remembering that it takes 5 to 10 days for us to see the effect of a lockdown when it's instituted. That's because of the incubation period of this virus. So we're not seeing at the moment the effect of the lockdown on reducing case numbers now. Where that lockdown's helpful is if there are mystery cases, well then the lockdown is obviously going to be stamping out that, suppressing those chains of transmission right now, so that they may turn up some mystery cases, but they won't have had a chance to pass it on. So far in this wave we have, or this, I won't call it a wave, let's call it just a cluster, because that's all it really is, one cluster linked to the holiday in 17 cases, none of them mystery cases so far. That doesn't mean there are no cases out there in the community, but certainly none have turned up yet, and these numbers are not growing day by day. So that is a good thing. It's, so far actually tracking a little bit better than that Black Rock restaurant cluster, which was brought under control again without any lockdown at all. The difference, we can talk about this in a moment, is the strain here is a little bit more concerning. That's where we are now. So the question is, well, where do you lock down if you're the government? And there are, a number of different decisions you could make there. You could lock down the second you see a single case of coronavirus in your state and just say, we have no tolerance whatsoever. That's the firm view of the Western Australian government and, the Queensland government as well. They basically said, we'll lock down the second there are any cases. You could go to, no lockdowns at all, and I don't think anyone in Australia is suggesting that. I think we're all, most serious commentators are agreeing we don't want to see these sorts of numbers that we saw in Victoria once again. But when would you need to lock down to prevent that? Is it when there are, one cluster that's being so far so good controlled by contact tracers? Is it when you've got mystery cases that are starting to spread through the community? When is it, when do you have a reasonable likelihood that you would lose control of this cluster and this outbreak, and it would become a much bigger wave? And New South Wales government's had a different approach to this. It locked down the northern beaches after, there was a pretty reasonable chance that wave would go out of control, but it didn't lock down other clusters in other parts of the city. Victoria has been going down that road, but with this lockdown, looks to have pulled back, and partly that is, it seems, because of that strain.
And on Friday, when this lockdown was announced, Casey, the Premier and health authorities of Victoria were at great pains to stress the threat that the UK strain of COVID-19 presents. So was it the variants and perhaps not the initial numbers that prompted their action?
The variant does make some difference, you'd have to say. This is, by all accounts, more transmissible. The precise number, the percentage more transmissible, is still sort of up for debate, but, it's anywhere between 30% is some of the more recent estimates, and the earliest ones we were hearing when this strain was discovered was as high as 70%, somewhere in that range, probably more toward the 30 or 40 or 50% than the 70% at this point, it seems. But there's a window there, and when you've got numbers like this, when you've got numbers like 5 or 6 or 700, that's a really big problem. When you've got numbers like 1 or 2 or 3 a day, well, that doesn't mean you're going to go straight to this in a matter of days. What it does mean is it shortens the generations that you've got before you see this sort of situation. It means you've got less time to act. So you've really got to be a bit more sure of yourself, and you've got to put in those controls. Do you jump straight to lockdown, or do you see if there are other controls that can get on top of that before then? That's, obviously the big wicked question for our governments.
Casey, thank you.